solve systems of equations. What does that mean? A system of linear equations is the set of two or more linear equations in the same variables. So remember, a linear equation makes a line when we graph it. That's the piece. So a system of linear equations would be like this example right here in the box that has two equations, and these both equations use x and y. Now, to find a solution of the system of linear equations, to find the solution, what we're doing is asked to find an ordered pair that is a solution of each equation in the system. Trying to find an ordered pair that they share. So they have an ordered pair in common. So the first way that we're going to look at doing this would be by graphing, because if we can see two lines on a graph, and if we see where those two lines cross, this point would be what they have in common. So graphically, this kind of makes sense to do. You can see it. But graphing is not always convenient, or sometimes we can make mistakes because we graph wrong or whatever. So I'm also going to go over two algebraic ways of doing it. So we're going to do three ways today. Graphing. The first algebraic way is called substitution, and the other algebraic way is called elimination, which you all have covered before. I don't remember it, but we all have covered it before. Okay, so to find the x-intercept, let's review this. We've already done this. How do you find the x-intercept? Remember we need to graph them with the lines? How do you find the x-intercept? You plug in 0 for y. And then solve for x. And we write it as whatever your x is, comma, 0. Now to find the y-intercept, if it is in the form of y equals mx plus b, what would be our y-intercept? Would be the b. So we do like 0b. But if it's not in that form, there is another way of finding the y-intercept, and not everything in here is going to be y equals mx plus b. In fact, we're going to be done with lines after this chapter. So you need to know how to find the y-intercept in every other case. So to find the y-intercept, you plug in 0 for x, solve for y. So that would be 0y. So it's just like finding the x-intercept, only you plug in 0 for the other variable. And then to find slope, if it's in the form of y equals mx plus b, what would be our slope? If it's in this form, slope is m. But what if it's not in that form? So there's lots of different forms. You can always change it into this form, but I'm going to teach you a different way today, because a lot of our assignment is in what's called standard form. So this is standard form. And this trick only works for standard form for slope. And you'll write it down and then I'll explain it, okay? This only works for standard form. So standard form, you would do a formula called negative a over b. Standard form itself was on a previous worksheet, but we really haven't done anything with it. It's when the equation is in the form of some number multiplied by x plus some number multiplied by y equals a constant. So if it's in that form, this is how we find our slope, negative a over b. So you take the first number, you negative that first number over the second number. So that's very fast if it's not in y equals mx plus b. If it's in standard form, that's very fast to find it. If it's in y equals mx plus b, do the old thing. If it's not, let's try to practice this new way, especially if you're planning to go to pre-calculus next year. If you're planning, yeah, but guess what? Half of us are. So half of us going to pre-calculus next year. I have to show you this stuff. My pre-calc kids have a test next block day in standard forms on it. So this may be the first time you're seeing it. Okay, so when we look at these equations, now we're going to start doing this. This is what I want to see in your homework. First thing I want you to do is go ahead and just like label these equations. So when we organize our work, everything for equation 1 is together. Everything for equation 2 is together. The first thing we're going to do for equation 1 is find the x-intercept, find the y-intercept, find the slope, and then graph it. I'm going to organize my work maybe a little bit differently than I did it before. And you don't have to use my way. You can do however your way is. But I like to make a chart that has my x-intercept and my y-intercept. And I just kind of do them side by side. This is the way I like to do it. Stay organized. So if I go back and look at my work, I remember what I was doing. So we're doing this just for equation 1. I need to find the x-intercept. To find the x-intercept, we plug in 0 for y. So here's equation 1. Let's make 0, plug in 0 for y. So we'll have x plus 2 times 0 equals 5. So now, x plus 2 times 0 is just x equals 5. So my x-intercept is 5, 0. Now we do our y-intercept. So we're going to plug in 0 in for x, because this is not in y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to plug in 0 for x instead. 0 plus 2y equals 5. Now I solved that for y. 0 plus 2y is 2y equals 5. Divide by 2. Y equals 5 halves. Or you could say 2.5 or 2.5. 0, 2.5. And then for equation 1, this is not in y equals mx plus b form. It is in standard form. So to find my slope, I'm going to use the new formula that is negative a over b. I know that formula. Why am I writing it down? So you can remember it. Because I'm not going to give you that formula. If you take terrible notes in here, it will show on all your tests and quizzes, and you won't enjoy this class. And Algebra 2 is the best. It is the best. It is, but it's not very fun if you don't understand it. Ask anybody who's gone past Algebra 2. Algebra 2 is the best. And say 1% people say geometry. Okay, so my slope, I do negative a over b. I look at this equation, and a is the coefficient on the x. What number is there? 1. So we do negative 1 over b is coefficient on the y, which is what number? Positive 2. So negative 1 over 2 is negative a half. That's my slope. We go to graph it. I'm going to graph my x-intercept at 5. I'm going to graph my y-intercept at 0, 2.5. Then I'm going to find more points using the slope. When you use the slope, would you like to start at a fraction or a decimal, or would you like to start at a whole number to apply your slope? Me too. I don't want to start at a fraction or decimal. So I'm going to start this one. It does not matter which one you start. And we're going to do our slope of down 1 over 2. Down 1 over 2. If you run out of space, then go up 1, left 2. Up 1, left 2. Up 1, left 2. Use your straight edge. Make a nice, accurate line. That's equation 1. Now we do equation 2. So equation 2, I'm going to find the x-intercept and y-intercept. To find the x-intercept, you make y 0. Equation 2, x minus 0 equals negative 1. So x has to be negative 1. Negative 1, 0. Finding the x-intercept, we've already done that. Is equation 2 in the form of y equals mx plus b? It is not. So I can either change it in that form, but that's extra work, or just plug in 0 for x to solve for y. So 0 minus y equals negative 1. That gives me negative y equals negative 1. Divide both sides by negative 1. Get y equals positive 1. 0, positive 1 is the y-intercept. And I have to find my slope, and the formula above says if it's in standard form, we do what? Negative a over b. This one is in standard form. It's in the form of ax plus by equals c. What is my a value? Negative 1. And what is my b value? What's in front of the y? Oregon?
How is A negative?
It's not.
Oh.
A is 1,
Okay.
but I have to do negative whatever a is. Yes. It would also be negative 1 because that sign is part of that coefficient. So it would be negative 1. So if I do negative 1 over negative 1, I get positive 1. My slope is positive 1. I graph my x-intercept. I graph my y-intercept. Then I use my slope and keep graphing more before I use my straight edge to find the line. Now, what are we trying to find? We are trying to find the solution to the system. And in my directions, it says the solution to the system of linear equations is that 2 point that they have, the 1 point they have in common, the place where they intersect or overlap. So if you're looking here, you're guessing. Yep, you are. You're guessing it's 1, 2. The reason why I say you're guessing is I'm going to take the chance that some of us might make a silly mistake graphing. So if you make a silly mistake graphing and then you say where they cross, but one of your lines is wrong, you're not going to have the right answer. It definitely looks like it's at 1, 2. But you have to check your solution in both equations. So this is the final part. You have to check your solution because just because they cross here doesn't mean you did everything right. So I'm going to check 1, 2, and I'm going to check it in both equations. So I'll make a chart. Here's my first equation, x plus 2y equals 5. My second equation, x minus y equals negative 1. And you have to plug both 1 and 2 in. So 1 plus 2 times 2 has to equal 5. So 1 plus 4 equals 5. Is that true? Check. Then I'll plug it in over here. 1 minus 2 equals negative 1. So negative 1 equals negative 1. That's true. If I get both to check, then my answer's got to be right. We write our solution as an ordered pair where the two cross. So these are the steps you're going to use for graphing. You'll have 4 graphing questions. So you're going to find the x-intercept, y-intercept, slope, graph the two, find where they cross, and check your answer. So that's the only graphing example we're going to do today because we've already practiced graphing. So when you're ready to go on, turn the page. I'm going to show you how to do it algebraically instead. If you're falling asleep, feel free to stand up at one of those desks back there. This is Algebra 1 content, and we're reviewing it. So none of this should be new. Our next is we're going to do an algebraic way. We're not going to do this graphing, but it is the same thing as graphing it and find the ordered pair. But we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it by what's called substitution. The steps are written here. I'm not going to read these to you. I'm just going to do them. So you can kind of follow my work and write it down. But the steps are here if you need them later. You know, when I'm absent, I have a substitute come in, and I leave, and they take my place. All right? So that's kind of what we want to think for our substitution. We're going to take something out and put something in its place that is equivalent. To do that, you want to first, let's label our equations. So when I start talking about the equations, you have it in your work. So when you do this Sunday night, you remember what we did. So first thing you want to do is make sure that one of these equations either says x equals or y equals. Does one of these say x equals or y equals? No. So we have to make one of them say x equals or y equals. And this is totally up to you. You look at it and you say, I'm going to change the first equation to say x equals. And I chose that because it looks easy. So I'm going to take away 3y from both sides. That's going to give me x equals 3 minus 3y. Not like terms, I cannot combine them. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my second equation again, just so I'm staying organized. The substitution part says, here's what x equals. Let's remove x from that second equation. Let's take out x and let's put in a substitute for x. Let's put in what x equals. So now my second equation is going to have the first equation inside of it. It's going to look like this. Negative x. Nope, not negative x. Haha. Lied. Negative parenthesis. And then x is equal to 3 minus 3y. Close parenthesis plus y equals negative 3. So I brought down that number 2 equation. I just, instead of x, I wrote 3 minus 3y. I substituted. Once you do that, if you did it correctly, there should just be y's left, and we can solve for y. We only have one variable, so we can solve for y. So then we just have to kind of remember order of operations and how we solve. We're going to distribute this negative. Negative 3 plus 3y plus 1y equals negative 3. And I will combine like terms. So here's 2 like terms, negative 3 plus 4y equals negative 3. And then I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I'm just solving equations. 4y equals 0, divide by 4, y equals 0. So we are able to solve for y. But our answer should be what? What was our answer like on the front of the page? What kind of thing is our answer? An ordered pair, correct. Do I have an ordered pair? I only have the y part. So what you have to do now is you plug in whatever we found, which is y, into equation 1. We plug into equation 1. So I'm going to have x plus 3 times 0 equals 3. So I plugged in y equals 0 because that's what we just found. And I solve that. X equals 3. I solved for x. So now I have 2 answers. I have an x and a y. but I might have made a mistake. So I'm going to check, my next step, check in 2. Check in equation 2. So we just plugged in equation 1, we check in equation 2. And we will check by plugging in both x and y. So I will do negative, my x value is 3, plus my y value is 0, equals negative 3. Does that check? Does it work? Does it make it true? So that means I have the right answer, but my answer is an ordered pair. So I have to write x, comma, y in that order. So let's go through substitution again a little bit faster because we have done this before. Josiah, wakey, wakey. So we're going to do question B. I won't do question C because we're going to run out of space and probably time. So the first step is label equation 1 and 2. We're going to stay organized. We're going to learn this because on Monday we will have 3 equations and 3 variables. That's new. This is review. So I labeled equation 1 and 2, and I have to make one of those equations say either x equals or y equals. What do you think? I already have one. Good, I don't have to do that step because the second one already says y equals. So all I have to do is say, or substitute what y equals into the other equation for y. So I will write x plus 2 parenthesis 3x minus 14, that's what y equals, equals 14. So I substituted that in. Put one equation to the other. So x plus, now I'm going to distribute, because now I'm just solving x plus 6x minus 28 equals 14. Like terms, 7x minus 28 equals 14. Add 28. 7x equals 42. Divide by 7. X equals 6. I just solved equations from algebra 1. Got one answer. I need both answers. So now we go to plug in equation 1. Plug in x. 6 plus 2y equals 14. Minus your 6. Divide by your 2. Y equals 4. After I plug in, what's my next step? After I plug in, I check in 2. So I'm writing those down, so when you go home, if you have written down check in 2, you don't have to go find what you're supposed to do there. You will remember because it says check in 2. So we plug both x and y into 2. So I'll have 4 equals 3 times 6 minus 14. 4 equals 18 minus 14. Is that true? Yes. If I get a check mark, I can write my answer as an ordered pair, 6, 4. So you'll have 4 questions that you have to do by substitution. You have to show your steps by substitution. And then we have one more section, real fast. Elimination. Elimination is everybody's favorite. Again, steps are here. I'm going to write out the way I would show my work. So example 2, A. To do by elimination, you have to have the x's, the y's, and the equal signs and the constants. They all have to be lined up. And we should be able to add these together and completely eliminate either the x's or y's so that we can solve for the other variable. If I add together x plus negative x, they cross out and become 0. So I get 3y plus y is 4y, and then 3 plus negative 3 is 0. Divide by 4. You get y equals 0. I already have y. That's elimination. You add them together and cancel something out. Now I have y. plug in 1. X plus 3 times 0 equals 3. X equals 3. Now I have X. Plug in 2. Negative 3 plus 0 equals negative 3. Negative 3 equals negative 3. Check. So I have my right answer, 3, 0. I went really fast because we just did all of that work except for the elimination on the first question. I did the exact same question. Just did it a different way. So example B. If I add these together, equation 1, I forgot to label equation 1 and 2. If I add together equation 1 and 2, will x's cancel out? Will y's cancel out? So what do we have to do? Who remembers what we have to do to make one cancel out? Nope. We want them to be on top of each other like that. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to multiply one of your equations to change the numbers so that something will add and cancel out. So I choose, and there's more than one answer here to do, but I choose to multiply the top equation both sides by, negative 2. And I'm going to rewrite both equations because so many students make mistakes because they try to do it all in their head. And I grade your papers. I see it. Just rewrite the equations. You'll make less mistakes, especially when we get to 3 variables. So I multiplied the top equation every number by negative 2. You can do that as long as you do it to every number. Then when we add them up, the x's eliminate. We get negative 3y equals negative 24. Divide by negative 3, we get y is 8. Then you go back to the same steps you were doing on substitution. Plug in 1. X plus 2 times 8 equals 14. X plus 16 is 14, so x has to be negative 2. Then you plug in 2. 2 times negative 2 plus 8 equals 4. Negative 4 plus 8 equals 4. 4 equals 4, that checks. So I write my answer as negative 2, 8. So when you do your own assignment, I should see all these steps. Not many people can do a really good job without putting all their steps down. And I promise you, you will enjoy math if you get it. The only way you can get it is doing the work. The back of this page is where the homework is. It's on a worksheet. However, you will not have space to graph on this worksheet. So I gave you a piece of graph paper. You got that graph paper? Your first 4 questions say, solve the system by graphing. So I want you to label your x-intercept, your y-intercept, your slope for both equations, just like we did it in class. And I want you to graph both equations, and then you have to check the ordered pair in both equations. That's for your graphing. For the substitution, you're going to use substitution the way we did it in the paper. Make sure you do plug in 1, check in 2. And then elimination, you're going to use the last thing we did today. Your assignment is this worksheet. Everybody got a graph paper?